All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Unlocked podcast. We are three business owners in the lock and security industry, and we have decided to get together and talk a little bit about what we've learned, mostly our mistakes, and hopefully have some people benefit from them. So I am Tony Hokinson.
Oh, is somebody supposed to go next?
Yeah,
I'm Chad.
You're next.
I'm Chad Lingefeld from Lock Security in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I am Lars Johnson from Calgary, Alberta. But more importantly, let's take an acknowledgement of the color of the shirt I'm wearing today.
I think, if you've ever seen a dark blue highlighter, and I think Lars got about 7 of them, and he threw it in the washing machine.
And as always, we have these great visuals on a podcast that really doesn't do it justice. But check it out on YouTube. I think this is a good looking shirt.
It is the brightest blue
shirt
that I've ever seen.
I think Chad is out of his mind.
I'm sure it looks great in person.
Way off base with this.
Yeah.
What do you mean in person?
I just like our color scheme we got going on here. Good blue and green, representing well.
Yes. I also want to commend you on that opening, Tony. You didn't get too excited. You were just
excited.
It was welcome everyone to the podcast. We are business owners. Here we go.
Yes.
It's very factual.
It was to the point.
Down to my style.
Basic. It was to the point.
I'm excited for today's episode. First off, Lars, you said you're a bit spicy today, so you're normally spicy. So I'm interested to see how today goes.
How extra spicy Lars is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And interesting topic. Recommended to us by Kevin from IDN. When to say no in sales. So basically, when do you we're talking about growth a lot here, and I think a lot of that comes at saying yes. And I think on some of our previous podcasts, we've kind of talked about that. Lars, you say your mentality is I'll say yes and figure it out later.
Unless it's coming from you, Tone, it's almost always no.
Yeah. But I think when it comes to sales, there are some projects that it is important to say no on, but it's an interesting line, especially when you want to grow, you want to help the customer.
Why is no important? Why?
That's what we're here to talk about today.
Well,
that's the point of the topic.
Yes.
Can we say no to the topic?
I think you've missed your opportunity there, unfortunately. You actually said you loved the topic when I said.
Well, that was off camera.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
We can listen to the last episode.
Chad this is in front of other people. I'd hate to agree with you, Tom.
That was several weeks ago. I'm not sure if I can agree with that again. Okay, so saying no to opportunities, saying no to projects, or saying no to just anything.
Projects, sales, specifically sales related.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
But I think
we've done this multiple times. So I'll give you a short one. There was years ago, I would say maybe 7 to 8 years ago, we got an opportunity to bid a pretty complex camera system in a community. So it was going to be multiple camera points at varying locations. Like it was going to have to be tied together, infrastructure. And this was back when technology wasn't what it is now. And also our knowledge and experience of how to connect multiple satellite locations for cameras was as widely known, because it was going to involve, fiber, different things like that. And we got in and looked at the actual scope, and our team just didn't feel comfortable with going ahead with the project or even bidding the project, because they felt like it was more than we were experienced for at that time.
You sound like a locksmith company. Exactly. It's hard and challenging. Better say no.
Fired already.
Well, here's the situation at that particular time, because I've got a pretty vast reputation of taking on bigger challenges than what we were capable of at the time. That particular one, I stand by our team that made that decision, because they said, here's the situation. If we do this and if it goes poorly, it will burn us in this category forever. Like it will literally be dead in the camera category.
Did you believe that? Or did your team believe that?
The team would believe that. And once we had the conversation, I was pretty confident in the same category that this was so complex that if we didn't do it correctly, then cameras as a category would be done. So we walked away from it. Ironically, 5 years later, that project came back up and we had gone through training and experience and gotten the resources, and were able to go in and bid something, and actually did a more complicated project than that at a different facility. So we've been able to overcome it, but that it was like a pause at that moment of going, we don't have the ability to take this on right now without the education and knowledge, and then potentially messing up our reputation.
Yeah, risk was too much for the rewards
in that particular situation. Yeah, but it did tell us if we want to get into this category, we've got to go back and do our homework. So
yeah, we got to get better if we're going to do it. That's fair.
So we said
didn't
no.
want to do it poorly. Yeah.
So we said no and did not proceed with that particular one. And since then, our camera category has grown drastically.
Yeah, we've actually gotten much better at saying no to certain projects. We've really tried to standardize our core product offerings, making sure we're offering the cloud. And when someone comes to us with a product that we don't normally service, it's been a little bit of a mindset shift, but we've had to learn to say no, or no, but no, we can't help with that, but we have this product offering we can help you with, and being comfortable with basically having a customer say no back to us, just by standardizing our product. So that's the biggest area we've really had to adapt lately on.
I shot at Kevin here. Maybe I hate the topic. I hate no. I hate saying no. I really do. I honestly feel like my job is to say yes, and I quite frequently say no is lazy. No just means you haven't asked enough questions. No means that it's too much work. We're not sure how to do it. Well, I say the same thing all the time, that, was anyone born a locksmith? Was anyone born a camera tech? Well, no, everyone has learned that. And I think it is so easy in our industry I'm going to make a culture index reference here, but with so many people that are high attention to detail, they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to look foolish. So I would say probably 90% of our staff, maybe even more, the first answer is always no.
Yeah.
So I feel that, my job is to say yes, and I get us into trouble, and I overshoot lots and make a mistake. However, I think also without that yes, I think that's where you get stagnant, and all you do is the same thing over and over again.
I agree with the premise of what you're saying, and so I want to get some clarification here on this topic, because saying no out of the gate without getting any vetting or asking questions or clarifying questions is definitely a concerning thing. And I think what I just heard you say, Lars, is trusting people to have the discretion of yes or no is more of the challenge, because if you give people an opportunity to just say no, then they may prematurely say no and walk away from an opportunity that you actually could do just because they didn't, maybe they were too busy or they didn't care to ask more questions. Is that what you're saying?
When you don't understand it clearly, the immediate reaction to most people in our industry is no.
Yeah. Sounds risky. No.
No, I don't understand it. No, I don't know how to do that off the top of my head. No, I can't immediately draw on previous instances where I've done this. No, it's a waste. Right. And then you can justify that. Oh yeah, it's not our core. It's not our, now I'm not saying, there's the example we use lots in our company was one of our guys years ago was with another company and ended up in like the most northern remote part of Canada and was sanding a boat.
Yeah, that's an easy thing to say no about.
Yeah, you're like, how did that happen? Well, it was a heritage building restoration. And then they had this boat, and the guy was a finishing carpenter. I was like, well, it's not that. Anyway, it was one of those things like, okay, that was probably too far. But the majority, the majority of the time, I hear, well, no, we don't really do that. It's like, okay, what can we do?
Yeah,
so that's a change of mindset.
There's this challenge, and you can talk culture index, whatever, but there's this request for a lot of our staffs to ask very finite parameters. Can we do this? Yes or no? And that I struggle with drastically, because you're saying, or can we service this category of products? Yes or no? Well, maybe.
It depends.
It depends. And that's really, the thing that frustrates you the most about it depends is exactly what you're talking about. Until I can get more information, I can't give you an answer. But to cut off an entire category or to cut, say, for instance, can we install cameras? Well, yes, but there's a caveat at that particular time that we didn't want to extend ourselves into. But we can install cameras. So what most people are asking for is cameras, yes or no. And the answer is cameras, maybe, or most likely.
Yeah.
So it's the discretion, understand, and ask more questions to get to an answer if you can or can't, not just the immediate short-sighted no.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's where I think as an industry in a whole, I think that's where our shortfall is. When we talk about wanting to scale, we talk about wanting to grow. It's like, well, you have to take some risks. That means you got to do more than just a rekey. Yeah, right? You have to ask those questions, and you gotta expose yourself to a little bit of risk there.
So Tony's trying to jump in here. Get in here, Tony, and tell us why risk is bad.
No, I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to clarify with Lars. Is your aversion to saying no to something less of an aversion and more of an annoyance with people you've run across in our industry? Like, are you opposed to no, or is it more that you're just so sick of hearing no so much that you're kind of taking the antithesis of that?
Well,
because there are things you're going to say no to.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you need to lay down on the couch?
So, well, two things. One, I think it is very easy to say no.
Yeah.
You can say no to anything. It's pretty easy.
It's safe.
It is very safe.
Most of the time.
The part, one of the aspects of the success we've had as a company is our ability to find niche and our ability to always be that first point of contact. So, anytime you call us as a company, whatever you ask for, our company will say yes. Do you sand boats? Yes. This is somebody I can introduce you to, right? We will always be that point of contact to help you find a solution, because that is what drives loyalty. I've made a living on being that kind of professional middleman where people, hey, do you know somebody who does this? I'm like, no, but I know a guy that'll know somebody that'll do that. But I remain that point of contact. And so I feel like anything security related, anything related to a door is where they come to us. And even if we don't do it in-house, we will make that recommendation. And the only reason we've maintained, I believe, the only reason we maintain that is because we say yes.
Yeah. The other way that I would attack that is training people to ask the clarifying questions to get to the root cause. Oftentimes people will ask you, do you do A, B, or C? And if it's not distinctly defined, then the easy answer is no, because that's safe. No. Or it sounds complicated and I don't want to have to deal with it. No. Whatever. So getting into the clarifying questions down to the root cause and the reason, because what they asked you for may not necessarily be what they're trying to, what they actually need.
Right. And so I'll take it to the next step. Does the person that you're talking to, does that have, like the person asking the question, does that have impact on how much you say no? Meaning, does your best customer ask you for something? Do they get yes more often than Joe Blow off the street?
Is that a rhetorical question or a direct question?
It's an actual question.
Like for me, I don't think that there's any distinction. I'm just whenever the question comes to me, I'm just always in the mindset of trying to get a better understanding of what you're trying to solve. Because most of the time, in my opinion, when I've experienced somebody asking an off the wall question like, "Can you, have a hovercraft hang a door?" Why are you trying to have a hovercraft hang a door? What are you trying to accomplish? And then some continual questions digging into the root cause, and then you go, oh, well, yes, we can solve that problem.
Yeah.
We don't use hovercrafts to hang a door, but this is how it would actually be resolved. But so even to that silly example, that's an easy no for somebody that if that falls outside of the parameter. No, we do not use hovercrafts to hang doors.
Right.
No. And then end of conversation, because we don't want to learn any additional things.
Right. And I think that's a better way of, explaining it. It's not a no, it's not a yes. It is just that clarification. And that's absolutely the way to do it. And I dare say most entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, are going to have that same mentality. Right. And it's always, well, let's take a step back and discuss, more the why. It's what are we trying to get at? So that's fair. Chad, this is episode like 400, and this is the first good point you've made. So congratulations.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Well done.
Cost of assumption. So it's funny that we bring up some of this because I'm trying to figure out what the date was. Maybe 6 weeks ago, we did a class internally on how to ask questions to get results. So trying to refute the always no or always yes with how to ask questions to get results. And my initial two topics that I brought up were, number one, the cost of assumption. Think of a time a wrong assumption led to a wasted time or effort and what happened. And then the second one was the point of jumping to conclusions. Oftentimes we jump to a conclusion without having all the facts to reach unwarranted conclusions, right? So those two factors in business is really how I would bounce back the question of how to say no. Is are we assuming or jumping to conclusions? Because if we're doing those two things, then that's how we're putting people in a situation where we're having to answer that yes or no question. Well, then we get back into driving down the path of at the end of the day, what are the ways that we ask the questions and get results?
And again, you just triggered my culture index sense. And, I just had the situation the other day, had a customer, actually I reached out to you guys about a certain product line, Saltos, right? Had a customer say, hey, can you order this project or this product for me? And so my answer was, yeah, sure. Let me, and then look into it. And, you have to jump on one foot and it has to be raining on a Friday for all this crap, right? For this to happen. And I caught myself, because I messaged you guys, caught myself, hey, why do you need this? What's this for? And he actually showed me. It's this, and I was like, oh, well, this is a terrible solution anyway. He's like, well, yeah, that's what we have though. And the rest, and I was like,
this is a great example.
Yeah. And then this turned, and I was like, okay, so, why are you trying to, well, this is our executive wing. We want this to look good. And I was like, well, you're about to put something ugly in there. It's like, well, what else can we do? I was like, well, let's rip it out and let's get a sliding glass door that looks slick, integrate it so they can just walk up, their face will open. He was like, you can do that? Like,
yes.
Yeah, man. And so yeah.
Okay. So this is a great example. What you just said, somebody called you with a specific question, and and somebody, if the question is, do you install Salto? Because that would be in the initial question, right?
And
we
my
can have
company would have said no,
because you don't, right?
Right.
So we can have a whole conversation around that particular brand, but that's not the point. It's just currently you don't install that brand. So the easy answer is no. The more complicated question is, what are you trying to accomplish, or why do you need that? Well, because our entire facility has 1,000 Salto locks in it and we need 5 additional. Okay. But that wasn't the answer. The answer was, well, this is the solution that we found on our own. And so we think this is going to fit the bill. Because you ask more questions, you realize that's not actually the best solution. And there are other alternatives.
And of course, dealing with someone on the other end that I would say, he's the on-site locksmith. So, he's like most locksmiths, draw on previous experience. Said, okay, well, this is what was there, so this is what I need. It was Salto, so I need Salto because that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So getting back to the topic here of saying no, because the reason I'm saying that is like, how do we break this into two different conversations? Because there are times I believe that you should say no.
Yes.
If it's going down a wrong path, if it's sanding boats or, whatever, versus how do you ask effective questions to ultimately get to a resolve? And those are two different conversations. So which conversation are we wanting to have?
It seems like, understandably so, Lars is very annoyed when someone immediately says no, right? Like you don't want to just push away that business. Like I can understand that for sure.
But when should you say no?
Yes. So we
say no? Okay.
We had a conversation 2 months ago down in Charlotte about business standardization, right?
Right.
And, standardizing your business, having a core product offering, and part of that is saying no. And there are certain scopes that once you ask all the proper questions that you need to say no to. And I think that's kind of the assumption we should go on, not after you just said avoid assumptions, but I think that is the assumption you should go on. Like when you ask all the proper questions, at what point do you say no? And I think the thing is to establish a common ground here, why do you need to say no to some things? And this kind of goes back to a little bit of standardization, but what is the value in saying no to certain things?
So the first, I'm just, going through my thought process here and thinking out loud of when I would say no. It's like, well, the first thing I'm considering is the context of who's asking it. If, if it's Chad calls me and says, hey, do you do a residential door? The answer is very quickly no, because, Chad has very little impact to me. Not this Chad, just some Chad in general.
Oh, yeah.
Most
Chads.
Chads.
Just picked a Chad, yeah. Whereas, if one of our biggest commercial customers says, hey, do you do residential doors? I'm like,
what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, exactly. Then we get into that conversation a little bit more. So I immediately, it's who's asking and what impact do they have long-term on the business or on me specifically. So that's probably the first thing I consider. And then tailor the answer to that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm going to start to craft out a decision tree here for Lars.
Wonderful.
What's the question for the
Who's
podcast? I love this.
What's the question? And then who's asking it? If it's Chad, I don't care. If it's anybody else, maybe ask more some.
Exactly. Now we're getting it here.
I was in the book I was reading this morning that actually talked about the sales process and how the first step in a sales process is qualifying. Like, do they fit your target market? Do they? I think also what you said, what impact do they have, but also what product, what are they asking for, right? Once you get and ask the right questions, if you find out that someone's asking for a new roof, they're probably not the best person to say yes to. I think interestingly, it gets a bit more challenging when it's specifically a security related question. Chad's example is a great one. Do you guys install cameras? Well, yes. Okay. Can you install cameras at this large project with all this fiber? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Yes. Maybe. We don't know. It gets a little bit harder in figuring out, what are the costs of performing poorly?
Right.
think
What's the opportunity cost? What's a profit? I think we're going to get to in a minute here, but.
Well, one of the things that I've always, and I think this kind of goes in line with what Lars was talking about earlier, was how do we position ourselves as an organization, as a service company, to have the first right of refusal. So we want to be the first call of contact from a particular customer or a group of customers. And if we can't do it, then we would like to say, yes, we can't, and here's an alternate solution, or here's somebody that can. But we want to figure out how to position ourselves to be the first right of refusal with anything inside of the security realm. That's the challenge. If you constantly have this no mentality, then you're not going to be first right of refusal, because human nature will already craft out your parameters of what you do and you don't. So your customer base will automatically define what you don't do based off of your previous answers. And if you're constantly saying no, then they're going to limit down your selection of offerings based off of that.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that Lars, you said you think locksmiths have a no mindset. I actually think there's sometimes the opposite problem. You look at most smaller lock shops and they seem to want to do anything and everything. If you think back to our standardization comment, it's like, hey, do you guys work on carry systems? Oh yeah, sure. Do you guys work on CanSec? Oh yeah, sure. Do you guys work on Brevo? Oh yeah, sure. And there's like this like people pleasing mentality.
But I think you're talking about the ownership. Smaller lock shops, there's probably only 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
Those are generally the more entrepreneurial ones that say
True.
yes. I think the less entrepreneurial, it's just, a very, very clear right or wrong. And, this has already prompted me to think to have the conversation with my team. It's, if you're about to say no, before you say that, ask one more question.
Mm-hmm.
What are we trying to get to? What is the problem we're trying to solve? Well, we need to sound a boat. Okay, if that's the answer is no, we're not going to do that. But here's who does.
This is the thing that I get stuck on a lot of times in these types of topics. And this may be shocking, but I can't give you an answer of when to say no. But what I do want to teach you is how to ask questions and how to get more information. So if as a organization, how do we focus our training efforts less on yes or no? Because we don't live in that defined world.
Right.
We don't only make chocolate chip cookies. And so if you ask for anything else, we don't make anything else. We are a chocolate chip cookie manufacturer, and that's just what we make. Mm-hmm. We live in a more ambiguous world. So the question is how, because we're not going to be able to create a list of things that we do and things that we don't do. That's an impossible list. And if we did have that list, you wouldn't be able to search it fast enough to get an answer. Right. But what we can work on is how do we teach people how to ask effective questions and navigate conversations? Because if you can do that, then you've now empowered them to make those decisions of if we can or if we can't.
Right.
So I disagree with that. You can't create a list of what you can do.
That's impossible.
Sure it is. You have it on your website. Like we do access control, we do cameras, we do locksmithing, we do door installation.
How generic do you want to get? We do stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
We have 5 big categories.
So, but you can start there. I mean, it's clear to we don't do fire alarm systems. Like you can give parameters of like, if it's outside of this scope, we can't personally do it. But I do think what Lars said 10 minutes ago is actually really valuable of ultimately, no, I think it really
could help.
Like our job is what is the best way we can help the customer. Right. And did my sound just come off?
No.
Just got quieter.
No, we can still hear you.
What is the best way we can help the customer? Is it best for us to help them, or is it best to have somebody else help them? But ultimately, we want to help them solve their problem. So if they come to us, fire alarms is a great example. Right? Yep. We don't do fire alarms. If someone comes to us and says, do you guys do fire alarms? We first, to your point, should ask some questions. Why are you looking for a fire alarm? What's the problem you're trying to solve? Unfortunately, we don't have the expertise in that area, so we are not the best person to help you, but we know so-and-so, let me make that connection for you. And I know recently we had a job that a customer was asking us to do some door work that we couldn't handle. And we told them up front, we do a lot of door work, but this is not something we specialize in. And we referred them to someone else. And the customer was very thankful. It was a way to like build trust.
That build loyalty for sure. Yeah.
And they understood, okay, these guys are humble. They know what they do. They know what they don't. I'm going to start with them because I know they'll give us an honest opinion.
Yeah. And that's how you develop that relationship or that reputation to have that first right of refusal.
Right.
Yeah.
You were about to say something.
No, stunned silence. I think we all just agreed on something. Can we make a note of this? That's what the silence came from.
Note that down some 25 minutes into the podcast.
But yeah, I do think you can start with, here's the core things we do. We actually just did this. We created a sales solutions guide. Like, here's the core problems we solve. Here's the core solutions we put in, right? Access control, cameras, alarm systems, key replacement, like whatever they all are. You have to start there because a new person starting with you might think that you sand boats, especially if you've done it in the past.
Let me throw you a little curveball, a little change here. So we all, I think, admire is probably the word. Our friend Alan Ponte, right? Mm-hmm. And his company with Felon Sons and Daughters and Sons, somewhere in Chicago or Indiana. I don't know. That's a good shout out for Al.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Anyway,
I'm
we
sure
talked
he's
about-
honored if he's listening to this right now.
It's a good thing that we don't name drop on here, because
It's pretty safe to say Al won't be listening to this.
You never know.
Sometimes, so, but
sometimes you do know.
yeah, sometimes, it's like, if three guys hitting a golf scramble and Chad's the only one up, you start talking about a mulligan, because sometimes, Tom, right?
It's very true. It's very true.
Yes. Anyone listening, that's a good story to ask Chad if you ever run into him about the pre-mulligan. But I digress. So Alan, I love what Alan's done. I think we all talk about it because Alan's like the king of no. On the surface, I would say he's the king of no. This is all he does. He has the platform. This is all he does. Now, that said, I think that's, once you dive into it, I think Alan's does it a very different way. So I don't think all yeses and all nos are equal, because Alan is saying no to products.
Yes.
So if you come to Alan and say, I need access control for my building, Alan says yes. But if they say, I want a Cantex system for my building, Alan's answer is no. It's no, and here's the reason why we go down a different path. Right?
Yeah.
So Alan talks about, okay, well, we only sell the platform, which is a handful of products, because now we only have to know a handful of products. Now we only have to train on a handful of products. We stock a handful. It just makes a lot of sense how he's done it. So he is very, guarded and says, this is what we do. And I know that's something we admire. And I would say that, he's very good at saying no, but I'm guessing because of his success, it's probably been the same kind of no we're talking about, as no and qualifying it, and then speaks to why it's no.
Yeah, I would say if you dig into it, Alan has done a really good job of not saying no, but asking, what are you trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
And why are you asking for that? Because we have a solution that will fix what you're trying to accomplish, but it's in this package, it's on this platform. So you have asked us to do this particular thing. I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say, this is how we do it better.
Mm-hmm. So Lars, for you personally, what types of projects, like specifically security related, like let's stick to locksmithing world.
Mm-hmm.
What types of lock projects would come your way, and after asking a proper series of questions, would you actually say, nope, we can't do that? What are some examples?
So there are two things that we get called on quite frequently that we don't. One of them annoys me, one doesn't. First one is revolving doors. Okay, we get asked to service revolving doors. It is a big difference. I've learned from experience of saying yes and wasting a lot of time and money for everyone. So revolving doors would be number one that we don't actually do. And that's because I said yes and then wasted probably 3 days of our time and I don't know how many hours, right, before realizing, well, because of course, when the call came in, I talked to her, oh, no, yeah, we can't do that. Oh, no, why not? Oh, no, we don't even know anything about it. Like, okay, well, who does? Well, not really anyone.
Okay. Somebody does. Yeah. They've just issued a challenge to you.
Yeah.
So
it's the Calgary, again, going to my mindset, it's the Calgary Zoo. They have 15,000 doors. They have slider, right? Like, to me, this is a huge, if we can be the experts and we can solve their problem, we become their default for this. Yeah. So that's why I extended us into a mess.
And I would say in a category like that, though, and this is maybe where you're headed, revolving doors are and sliders, right? Those are two categories of unique openings that most companies or most people that service them well don't service swinging doors well, or
that's what they do. Yes.
Traditional lock. Yeah, they just focus on that. And so I think, yes, we may have all been to this place before. We're like, we've got to get every opening and every type of opening. And at the end of the day, a real possibility is you're not going to have a technician that is really good at swinging doors and frames and also really good at revolving doors and sliders. Mm-hmm. So it's a specialty thing. So the question then comes down to, is there enough work to have a specialty technician that only works on sliders and revolving doors? In which case, then yes, that is now a path that you fold in, but it's not something that you dabble in.
Right. Because of the level of complication, I would agree with that for sure. The other one that we say no to all the time, which I still scratch my head, sliding doors, like patio doors.
Oh yeah,
Sliding, right? Exactly. Like we're probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And the answer is always no. And at some point, we have to have a look at this and say, okay, what is the challenge? What is the uplift? What is the skill set that, how long would it take? What is the profitability of this? This is just kind of, my mindset is, well, if we keep getting asked 3 times a week, this doesn't seem too far out of scope. What does it take to get our skill set up to that point? Because I hate saying no.
Do you guys do anything to track, like, when you say no and how frequently you're saying no to certain types of things?
No. Should we?
Got him to say no.
That's a great idea, Tone.
Good luck with it. Let me know how it works out. Who's going to tell you that you said no?
Who's going to tell me that I said no? Like to Tony's point?
Correct. Yeah.
How
how many of your employees are going to say we said no to 100 opportunities this month?
To me?
Oh,
absolutely no one.
Absolutely would. Yeah.
No, they won't.
Why wouldn't they?
Good luck. Let me know. Give us a report next recording.
Well, I mean, they're not going to have many between now and Thursday.
Probably 0. Okay. So another one that we have said no to is, from a category standpoint, are multi-point locks on doors. Now, this may be a very
classic.
Well, this may be a very regional thing. But when we were looking at it, we were trying to phase out of residential and be focused on commercial. And what we found is when we might get 1 to 2 requests or challenges with these a month, and the amount of manpower that it took to get it correct, and the errors that were, like, the high error value associated with it, it was a negligible profit category. So here's this lock that you can sell for $200 with 10 hours of manpower, 10 hours of admin, 2 returns, and 3 site visits later. Like, why there's no benefit? And the question that we came back to was, and I think we've done this multiple times in that particular category, is it can't be that complicated. Somebody's got to be able to solve this. And so we would get more training on it and find it. And it was, and maybe somebody that's listening to this podcast says you're an idiot, and it's a very simple thing.
No doubt there's people doing that.
Yeah. But for us, it was such a diversion of our normal category that it didn't make sense. It was an unprofitable category. So one reason to say no is if you've tried something repeatedly, you've put training and effort around it, and you still are negative profit on performing that task, there is no benefit in continuing to do it. So you're taking that opportunity away from other things.
And again, that's where I go back to the same thing. For me, the 3-point locking system is an easy one to say no to.
Yeah.
Because it's a residential customer. It is a low impact, a low repeating, low big picture impact on the business, right? Some people are going to say, well, they might own a business, the person that has that on the front door. Yeah. And
one out of every 3,000 customers that you service.
Yeah, and that is true. And I think that's just a risk I'm willing to take.
Yeah.
So anyone listening that has a 3-point locking system, burn the house down and start again. That's the only logical way to do it. They are the worst. Burn it down right to the ground.
Oh, and really, we should probably, this is a whole side rant, unnecessary, but really it's the fault of the manufacturers of these things. Why have they made so many versions of them? There's literally an infinite number of parts and measurements. There's no standardization around it. We've effectively lost Tony because he went to go text his team to get them to tell him how many times they say no. He took that as a challenge.
Did you actually just do that?
Yes.
Yeah, you did.
Oh man. 1, how Chad knew that's what you were doing. Tony, 2, how that, wow.
I'm more surprised that you didn't know that's what I was doing.
I thought you fell asleep. Like I could see your head drooping there. I thought,
No, he's like, I'm going to prove this statement wrong.
yes.
I'm actually genuinely curious too. So,
Yeah.
we're gonna see.
I look forward.
I won't
to the
have much of a
results.
sample size in 3 days, but by the following recording, I might have a decent sample size. So
Yeah, probably not. Okay, what is our
salty.
how do we wrap this up? How do we wrap this episode up? Because Lars has got a really exciting topic for us next.
So I think there's a couple things that I have to take away. One is I really like the fact that you don't say no. It's more about how you do it. Like you don't use the word no, we can't do that. It's all about asking further questions, training your staff on what are the questions you should be asking to figure out the root cause of the problem. And then when you have to say no, you don't say no, but you say, let me refer you to so-and-so to have them help you, right? Ultimately, you want to help the customer. I think those are my 2 takeaways. A is training people to handle those requests, and then B, making sure that ultimately you're just helping the customer.
Yeah. So I want to say one extra thing on that, Tony. One of my major fears in life when it comes to this topic is once you define and get into your environment, your business environment, it is so utterly difficult to repeal it.
The culture of no.
Yeah. So like right now, it's hilarious the multi-point lock thing that just came up because we had written that off years ago that we were not going to do that, and here recently a request came in for a buddy of mine for his house, and it's got 14 multi-point locks on it.
Burn it. That's the answer.
So I'm like, ugh, and they immediately come in. We don't do multi-point locks. Like that's a no. And so that is always a big fear of mine and that's why I probably lean heavier on asking for what are you trying to accomplish versus the ultimate no, because once that no happens and once that gets out there into your infrastructure, it's very, very difficult to get people off of that no.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lars, what topic do you have next for us?
I was hoping you'd keep ad-libbing here because I'm reading through the topics and I'm not.
My eyes are starting to burn from the color of your jacket, so I need to. We've got to get to the next topic so I can take a break from your shirt.
Yeah, because I think he's going to keep it on for the next topic. I want to bet. Based on your commentary, he's probably going to wear it every single episode.
Yes. That's fair.
3-point locking system and this shirt are all going into the fire.
Well, while Lars is still figuring out what topic we're going to be discussing next, just a reminder, we do have a website and a blog. It is curated by the week. Every Thursday morning, mostly, we have a new episode that's coming out, so we want you to subscribe. It is free, as a matter of fact. Every episode that we produce is available to you free of charge. So you can go check them all out. And I think we're at 30, is this 36 now? This is episode 36. And I have got so much feedback from folks that have messaged us on. As a matter of fact, guys, I got a phone call from somebody last week that listened to our episode around the acquisitions. And they called me on the phone. They got my phone number somehow and said, "Hey, I'm one of your now, I guess, 27 listeners," and which I thought was pretty impressive.
Wow.
We jumped from like 8 to 27 pretty quick. And anyway, so we had a whole conversation around the acquisition checklist, and we started talking about a couple of different things and how they're moving into different markets and looking to acquire. And so it was really neat to have that experience from a conversation perspective. And the big challenge that they had was around, what are the things that I haven't thought about yet when I'm dealing with a merger or an acquisition into another company, another brand in another market? So anyways, we enjoy that type of feedback. I know you guys get emails, text messages, and phone calls regularly from folks that are listening with questions and suggestions. So thank you for doing that. Please reach out to us on LinkedIn or by email. And of course, you can find our website at unlockedpodcast.com. Make sure you subscribe our YouTube channel and on the podcast channels as well, so that you get the latest episode every Thursday morning. So I guess the next topic is going to be a guess. So it'll be a surprise.
Topic.
It'll be
mystery topic. Looking forward to it.
I have one.
Oh.
rolling out new products into an industry. So marketed, I don't know what to call it, but I want to go, I like your mobile credential one. I think there's a lot there beyond just mobile credentials, like innovation in an industry. How do you
combat the old mindset?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll workshop the title between recordings, but that'll be the topic of some sort on our next episode. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss whatever is getting ready to happen next.